Welcome back to the channel, folks, where we look at the first episode in the series of Great Naturalists. In today's episode we pay tribute to Robert Lloyd Praegar, an Irish naturalist and botanist who made immense contributions to the island of Ireland. Robert Lloyd Praegar was born in 1865 in Holywood, County Down, and died in May 1953. He was an Irish naturalist and botanist and an accomplished writer who was by vocation a librarian and scholar. Lloyd Praegar was by profession an engineer and also by career an accomplished senior librarian working at the National Libraries in Dublin up until his retirement in 1924. But during his working life he frequently tracked and trailed the highways and byways of Ireland, recording its biodiversity. And above all, he was driven by his interest and passion for nature, and probably is not unlike Alfred Wainwright and his accomplishments in the Lake District. Lloyd Praegar was educated at Belfast Academic Institution, otherwise known as INST. He attended Queen's University, Belfast in 1882, graduating in 1885 with a BA in Arts and in 1886 with a Bachelor of English. Robert Praegar was born in 1865 in Holywood, County Down, and was from a Unitarian background. His father was Dutch and was an importer of linen. In 1902, Robert Lloyd Praegar married his lifelong partner, Edward Magnusson, or otherwise known as Heidi, whom he met in 1901. Robert's younger sister, Rosamond, was in her own right an accomplished and professional sculptor in her time. The uncles of Robert Praegar were the founders of the Belfast Feehan Naturalist Club, which was established in 1863 and to which Robert became secretary in 1892, likely sowing his seeds for the passion of nature. In his thirst for learning, Robert Praegar founded the Irish Naturalist in 1892, which in turn was superseded in 1924 by the Irish Naturalist Journal. We shall take a fleeting view of the achievements and landmarks of Lloyd Praegar's life. In 1876, Robert had joined the Belfast Feehan Naturalist Club at the age of 11. By 1893, he commenced his work career by joining the National Library of Ireland in Dublin as an assistant librarian, to which he rose to the most senior post of chief librarian up until his retirement in 1924. During that time, he undertook a wider Clare Island survey from 1909 to 1915, as well as a survey of Lambay Island, to which we will return to in the wider context. In 1921, he was awarded the Veitch Medal for contributions to horticulture. In 1924, Robert retired from the post of chief librarian on full pension to pursue his love and recording of nature. In 1931, he became president of the Royal Irish Academy. After his retirement in 1924, Robert continued to publish learned articles and books. In 1937, Robert wrote his book The Way I Went on his Irish botanical treks and tribulations as he recorded biodiversity across the counties of Ireland. In 1948, Robert became the president of the National Trust for Ireland and Task. Praegar's book The Way I Went is an absolute must for natural history enthusiasts, and it is 5 years of weekends spent walking in the Irish countryside, some 5,000 miles, swimming through flooded caverns, staying out all night on islands, and sifting fossil bones and exploring cat and tramp tombs. In the following slides we will take a fleeting overview into his other literary works. 1897, Praeger produced a volume entitled Open Air Studies in Botany. In 1901, Praeger produced a volume known as Irish Topographical Botany, and this underpins his skill as a librarian in the terms of organising and his use of maps. Praeger's organisational skills and weekend bio-blitzes produced distribution maps which were many decades ahead of things like the NBN distribution maps in times when we had no GPS, computers or other modern technology. We will return to Praeger's contribution in a short while in respect of his contribution to the Irish Vice-County system. These coloured systematic maps reflect the ecological and geographical factors affecting plant growth as well as the botanical divisions enhancing an understanding of plant distribution. In 1950, Praeger produced a book called Aspects of Plant Life, and those who may want to read it will find a link in the description on Project Guttenburg. In and around 1950, Praeger also produced a volume known as The Natural History of Ireland, which was reprinted on a number of occasions. Praeger's book of 1937, entitled The Way I Went, is by far the most enjoyable of reads. It is an anecdotal account of his journey around Ireland, visiting each of the vice-counties, recording the flora and fauna and the various circumstances which challenge and present. Praeger talks of his visits to mountain tarns, sleeping in hedgerows, and visiting ancient tombs amongst many other adventures on his travels. Praeger also adopted mapping, which became the Irish Vice-County system, dividing the island of Ireland into a number of vice-counties, as was the case on mainland England with the Watsonian vice-counties. Here we see a map of the Watsonian vice-county system and designations of each of the counties. Can you see your vice-county on the lists that present? The vice-county system is still widely recognised in biodiversity recording, with each vice-county having its own recorder in each of the flora and fauna disciplines. During his working career, Praeger undertook two major island surveys, the Lambay Island Survey just north of Dublin on the east coast, and the Clare Island Survey off the west coast of Ireland on the island of Clare. The Lambay Island Survey contributed 90 new species to the Irish flora and fauna. 5 of these species were new to science, and it laid the grounds for the survey at Clare Island on the west coast. Robert Praeger was a man ahead of his time and somewhat caught between centuries. Darwin's Origins of Species would have only been published 6 years before Praeger's birth, and he would have been 16 when the volcano Krakatoa erupted, resulting in the biodiversity of the Sumatran Islands being lost. Praeger no doubt had the evolutionary colonisation and development of subspecies in mind when he looked at Clare Island, but if truth be known, it was likely his first visit in 1900 with his wife that captivated him by the lure of the island. The Clare Island survey had 2 objectives. First of all, to look at the speciation of Oceanic Island to determine if endemic species arose from natural selection, and secondly, to look at wider species across the different taxonomic groups and make detailed records. Praeger engaged upward of 100 scientists, largely by letter in those days, to participate in the survey, the results of which were published in 67 parts or fascicles. The remarkable findings of what is a bioblitz is given in the slide that follows. Notably, 120 species new to science, 11 flora and 109 fauna, and new to Britain and Ireland, 398 species, of which 55 were flora and 343 fauna. Across the taxonomic groups, the survey embraced 8,488 species, of which 5,269 were fauna and 3,219 were flora. Sadly, in 1953, Lloyd Praegar returned to his family home at Sister, where he died. The grave of Robert Lloyd Praegar is in Dean's Grange Cemetery in Dublin, where he is buried with his wife, Heidi, who died 1 year previous. Praegar's family home in Hollywood, County Down, is commemorated with a blue plaque, as indeed is 19 Fitzwilliam Square, which is where he lived during his working time at the National Library of Ireland. It is perhaps befitting that most of Praegar's collections of books, photographs and pamphlets have been retained. For example, in the library at the University of Ulster in Coleraine, there is a specialist collection likely reflecting Praegar's many hours walking the coastal paths looking at the coastal flora of the north coast of Ulster. The Royal Irish Academy also holds a collection of Praegar's photographs, which was given to him on his departure to Dublin when he embarked on his post as a librarian. It is unlikely that this short video tribute does justice to Robert Lloyd Praegar's extensive efforts and contribution to the Irish flora. Lloyd Praegar's contribution to botany and natural history is indeed outstanding when we consider it was made in times of limited technology and indeed restricted transport links, and represents a sterling effort which would be hard to surpass in this day